This is a brief follow-up to my 2026 Creeping Thyme update. Starting where we left off, we sowed these seeds on February 7th. They germinated in less than a week. My last update on this was recorded on February 21st, 2 weeks after sowing in the 3-inch pots. As you might recall, my goal was to get these 60 plants in the ground in late March or early April so they could settle in and develop some good root systems before the summer heat. Well, we made it. On April 3rd, we planted them out. Their tender roots were bursting out of those 3-inch pots, and it was a perfect time to get them in the ground. April is probably our rainiest month here in Alabama, and the temperatures are still moderate. Plus, we have virtually no chance of a frost now. In fact, we really got lucky because the day after we planted the plugs, we got 1.56 inches of rain in one day. And while the thyme doesn't like soggy roots, this early drenching of rain was just what was needed the day after planting out. So the timeline kind of goes like this. February 7th, the seeds were sown in those 3-inch pots and put under lights in my germination lab. Now, my lights are nothing special, just shop lights. See my previous video if you want more specifics on my methods, the medium used, and so on. As I said, they sprouted in less than a week. By March 22nd, they were ready for moving outside and hardening off. And I highly recommend you don't skip this step, as it really helps the plants acclimate to actual conditions. As you can see, I moved the 60 pots outside. But at this point, I put them in clear plastic totes, and placed them in an area without direct sun. They needed only a view of the blue skies. This kind of provides an intermediate step, introducing them to the power of the sun, which then sparked faster and sturdier growth. This also introduced them to temperature fluctuations and some good old fresh air. And if a surprise cold spell hit, I could easily tote them back inside the germination lab for a day or two. It's critical that these totes have holes in the bottom for drainage, as we don't want our precious plants getting waterlogged. As you can see, I only partially covered the totes initially for about a week, weighing down the tops so they didn't blow off. And this allowed for steady airflow and gradual introduction to natural conditions. Since the sun and humidity control are now in nature's hands, it's critical that they are looked after every day to ensure they don't dry out. To determine whether to water or not, I again use the weighing the pot method. If the pot's heavy, they don't need watering. If it feels light, then they probably need some watering. And I eyeballed the top layer to be sure there was no drying out. This always seems to work for me. So in nearly 60 days in the lab and outside, we saw zero damping off and no evidence of saprophytic mold. That's a fancy term that indicates sanitation and moisture control in my germination lab were nearly perfect. By using a high porosity mix, the mycorrhiza, we ensured the soil surface stayed breathable and beneficial fungi outcompeted the pathogens. It kept the cradle clean for our time. And let's not forget those Asian lady beetles keeping watch over those seedlings. I dare say these were the most pristine seedlings I've ever grown. No fuzz, no damping off, just pure healthy growth. Here you can see the root system. And after less than 60 days, this thyme was ready to get out of those pots and do their thing. I heard one YouTuber say that creeping thyme had shallow roots. Well, that's not my observation. And that's why I elected to plant them directly into small pots, moving them then quickly to hardening off and into their final home in the soil. Yes, the roots are fragile, but they were certainly ready to get their freedom after less than 60 days. So I'd suggest not planting these in seed trays. You just have to plant them out 2 weeks later. You might recall that I used both Everwilde, which I bought fresh this year, and Eden Brothers seeds left over from last year. There was no noticeable difference. Both are top brands, and germination was fast and full. So April 3rd was a beautiful day to plant these plants out. Because of pending hip replacement surgery, my helper did most of the groundwork. We placed these in and among those planted out last year that, while still developing runners, have begun to come to life already this spring. For those who remember this project, we started with some small plants from the garden center in about May or June of last year, 2025. Then we bought some seeds and nurtured them in the germination lab during the summer, planting them out in late September of last year. Now we've just added 60 more to this area on April 3rd, 2026, before Alabama's June, July, and August extreme temperatures. This is now the third batch of thyme I've planted, and I expect here in Zone 8A to see those pink-purple flowers maybe near the end of this month, April, or sometime in May this year. The next edition of this project should show the runners joining together and beginning a nice blanket of creeping thyme. So here's an encouraging note. If you haven't started your creeping thyme project yet, it's not too late, especially if you're in a cooler climate. If you're in my zone, start your project indoors in the next month or two and plan to plant them out in the fall. I'm recording this the first week of April 2026, and any of you could start this project today. Stay tuned for updates on this project, and don't miss my recent video on how I used AI for planning my flower garden. Yep, I planned a flower garden using artificial intelligence. It's here on my channel. My next projects include developing a ground cover for shadier, damp areas. Baby blue forget-me-nots. So, creeping thyme for the hot, sunny areas and forget-me-nots for the shady or damp areas. Here's a small patch I experimented with last year. I think it's beautiful, so I need to do more of this. Check out the picture. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below, and I'll see you next time on Grandpa Digs It.